Hi everyone, welcome. Let's see who I'm just going to take a gander around the Zendo here for a minute. It's nice to see your faces. If you thought to yourself today, hey, I thought John Tarrant was supposed to be teaching, you would be correct. But he is, unfortunately, his body did not agree, and he's been not well the last few days, and so he's all right. But it seemed like a good idea for him to rest and tend to himself, and I thought it'd be a nice thing. Well, we could have canceled it, but I'd miss you, A. And B, it seemed like a nice thing that we could do for him, to just kind of hold the temple in his absence. So here we are. So let's, without further ado, let's meditate for a few minutes and just let people finish coming on and getting settled. Just let the bell and whatever companions you find with you today call you here. Here I have the wind whipping around and the first spring birds daring to come out and kind of fly around, see what seeds they can muster up. And a few little airplanes that I have no idea where they're coming from or where they're going. Somehow in the silence we find each other. Somehow in the silence we find ourselves more permeable. One of the nice things when you're meditating is you can start to just feel something that very gently opens. Like a little door creaking open. And parts of life you had maybe forgotten about peek in and see you. So welcome everyone. As you may have seen, today we're going to be hanging out with the red thread. And it was kind of funny, starting to prepare this morning, because as soon as there's just something about even invoking the red thread that it's like tears just start to appear in my eyes. And I think, where did you come from? I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel particularly open. I didn't feel anything, but it just like wandering into the territory of this thing that binds us to the rest of life and that holds our care and our passion and our longing and our all the great forces that kind of pulse through us. It's it's potent. I'm drawn to, I can see right now, Marion Power has a red vest on, and she also has her husband peeking out from behind her, and I think, yes, that's the red thread. That's the people that find us and that love us and that, I don't know, somehow we put up with. That's part of the red thread too. Everyone all the ways we find ourselves connected to certain people and certain stories and certain creatures. It changes us somehow. And the koan itself says, why can't the clear-eyed bodhisattva sever the red thread? And I think the idea here in Zen is that, I don't know, I still hear this. I still hear this from myself sometimes, you know. If I were more awake or if I practiced harder, I just wouldn't be bothered by things as much, or I wouldn't be overtaken in the ways that I am. Or that somehow I'm going to find a place where I won't get, I don't know, all my projections and compulsions will somehow find their way to rest. You think, well, probably not. I mean, would you really want them to? They're part of what makes life alive and interesting, the great human drama. And I guess one of the things we're talking about when we're talking about the red thread is the way that encounters transform us. When we sit in front of someone, or even when we think of someone, or we run into someone on the subway, somehow it begins to change us. And the way we fall in love and the way we find loss unbearable, and the way that we're transformed by, I don't know, things we long for, the unbearable kind of longing that can live in us, or envy, or even hatred. I remember one time, a few years ago, sitting in a retreat and feeling just this overwhelming sort of sadness, and realizing somehow in that moment, oh, this is just some underbelly of love. That the reason that this sadness is so overwhelming, or that the pain even of something I'm witnessing is so overwhelming, is because I actually love the world so much, or I love a person so much, or my own heart is so tender that sometimes it can't bear to feel or see the pain in things. And it seemed like in that moment, everything that I happened to look at then became full of love. Even the things I was trying to get rid of was because I was trying to preserve some kind of love, or I was afraid of losing something, or I was afraid of, I don't know, having to bear something in myself. And there's this temptation to think that, I don't know, somehow if I don't get, I met a man a little while ago, and he said, I said, well, how are you? How's it going? And he said, well, I'm on the path, and I'm trying to rid myself of attachments and aversions. And I said, well, how's it going? And he said, well, I have a practice. And I said, well, how's that going? And he mostly was telling me how he was just trying to become a completely different person. And I said, well, how's that going? And he told me how he had lived this life where inevitably he had betrayed himself and everything had kind of fallen apart, but now he was going to try to be a good bodhisattva and not do any of those things anymore that would cause himself or anyone else any pain. And I said, well, good luck, you know. And you could tell, like, the container he was starting to put around himself to be good was just getting tighter and tighter and tighter, and more aspects of his life were starting to be excluded. And he said to me, I'm married to someone in fashion, and he said, boy, that's just a world of delusion, isn't it? And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, oh, materiality, chasing after things. I mean, just full of trouble. And I said, well, it depends, you know? Like, you can watch any industry. You can watch. I went to a fashion-y sort of gathering a few weeks ago, and you can tell, like anything else, like spirituality, like teaching, like cooking, like anything, you can engage with it and it can become something that you're using to feel good about yourself or not feel bad about yourself, or compare yourself to other people, or chase something you don't feel like quite belongs to you. Or it can just be that you love fabric and texture and beautiful things and combining things, and it lives in you in this very organic way. And so I was really realizing as I was talking to him, oh, in some way it doesn't matter actually what the industry is or what the encounter is or what kind of anything. I can either be free inside of it, where I can not be seduced by comparing myself to something, or chasing after something, or trying to rid myself of something, or I can be totally consumed by it. But the interesting thing about the red thread is you can't figure that out ahead of time. You can't go into things thinking, I will be free. I will not get caught up in any of those things. It's by getting caught up in those things that you realize that you're not free, or that you realize that, I don't know, you're trying to hold on to something or push something away, or refusing something, or being terrified of losing something. And it's interesting how, in Buddhism, all the way back to the time of the Buddha, there was a whole section of people that had decided it was about getting away from everything. If I can cut off the desires of my body, and I can cut off any delusive thoughts, and I can just realize that everything's going to return to the one, and eventually transcendence will appear, and so I better not have, I don't know, any marriages or any quarrels or any fried food or anything that might contaminate me, so that I can hurry and return to the oneness. And then you had this other whole camp of people that sort of said, nah, we don't think there's anything waiting for us, so we might as well have all the sex and all the fried food and all the quarrels, and just, and this is the realm that the Buddha came up in. And in a way, he kind of tried both. He was born into the life that was full of riches and lovers and not a shred of any pain. And then finding that eventually oppressive and unbearable and a little bit empty, he found himself to a world that was then, one tiny grain of rice was even too much in terms of indulgence. And he somehow realized that I don't think it's about that. It's not about either one of those. It's the middle way. It's somehow being able to be right in the middle of life, and right in the middle of people, and right in the middle of the tumult of my own heart, that I can get free. And Zen very much picked this up because the world it lived in wasn't going to be getting away from any of those things anytime soon. And I was thinking of the very first Zen teacher I had once said this great thing to me, which was, she went into this whole path seeking clarity. And this has now been, 30, 40 years or something, and she's been walking it and teaching it and being a monk and everything. And she said, I'm still not very clear, but I just keep falling more and more in love with the world. And somehow that became the path instead. And you can feel how that's true. Like it stops being, when we include things, it stops being about needing to parse, this is awakening and this isn't awakening, and this is being a good person and not being a good person, and everything just gets infused with a kind of lively mystery and uncertainty that brings us closer to things. And yesterday, I had a sort of red thread day yesterday. I went, last weekend I was away teaching with some of you, and my partner was stuck home. And so when we just decided what we were going to do yesterday, she said, can we please go out? Can we go out into the world? You know, I've been here at home for a week, and I miss people. I miss things. So I said, sure. So we decided to go into the city and see an off-Broadway play. It was called Love. And I had no idea what it was about or what we were getting ourselves into, but it sounded promising. And it was the last day it was playing. And on our way in, we went by our old neighborhood and we decided to go to what used to be our very favorite taco place for lunch. And because we never get to go anymore. And we'd never been at this particular time. And you walk in and it was completely full of young parents with toddlers, like chock full. Usually I've been at night and everyone's having margaritas and sort of being cool and hanging out. And this was just like, we walked in and said, wow, this is a very particular demographic. And it was like sitting there watching them. So we got our little tacos and we're sitting watching all these young parents and families. And in a way, it was just like being, you know, the yarn of the red thread just wrapping around everything. Just see how much these children adore their parents and how much these parents adore their children. And yet, you know, they're toddlers. They're completely uncontrollable. And so everyone was disrupting their lunch at every given second to go walk them around or try to, you know, console them or try to get them to eat something or try to, you know, get them to not hit each other, or, you know, it was just this cauldron of life. And it was very, I don't know, there was something just incredibly sweet about it. And watching particularly, there was one little boy that was just, he kept just staring at us, but then he just kept wanting to be picked up by his parents. And so no matter what, he would just, and then as soon as they'd pick him up, he would just look at us. He could bear to engage with us if he was being held tight by his parents. And so that was sort of where we started. And then we went to see this play, and the way it was set up was that it's set in a homeless shelter, and there are a number of seats that are mixed in on the stage. Everything's sort of blended together so that there isn't audience and participants. There's just a setting and everything. And I could feel in us the, oh God, please don't let our seats be on the stage. You know, you immediately feel the way, I would like to be the clear-eyed bodhisattva. I would not like to be tangled up in all this business. And the play starts, and it's the gist of it is that there are a number of people, a 50-year-old man and his aging mother, a young family, a Sudanese woman, that are all by circumstances that we don't even know have ended up in this place. And we immediately are confronted by the reality that there's one tiny bathroom. There's one tiny sink and one tiny bathroom. And immediately this presents a problem because the little girl has to pee-pee at the same time that the old woman who can't hold her bowels very well has to go. And so everybody's trying to negotiate, how do you be in this situation? And everyone's trying to be very polite to each other and not, oh, sorry, and not use the sink and not, and everybody keeps telling themselves and each other, I'm sure we won't be here for very much longer. I'm sure this is just a mistake that we've ended up here. And surely the pregnant woman, or surely the fact that, the old woman needs different care will get us out of here. And as the play continues, you realize they're not going anywhere. They call the offices and no one can help, or they miss an appointment and get sent to the back of the line. And meanwhile, there's these tiny, you just keep getting the sense there's not quite enough food, or there's not quite enough space for the teenage boy to listen to rap on his headphones without disturbing everyone. And the little girl wants to practice her Christmas carol and everybody wants her to be quiet. And so you just get all this tension that's just pressing in and no one can help it. And there's not quite enough food, and there's not quite enough storage space, and there aren't quite enough cups. And yet everyone's trying very hard to be nice and to, guess in some way, be clear-eyed about it, be forgiving to each other. But there are these strange moments of incredibly touching intimacy as this proceeds. Like one day, the 50-year-old son who's, pretty heavy and pretty obnoxious generally, and, always kind of saying the wrong thing to people. He says to his mother, "Shall we wash your hair, Mom? No one's here. We have the sink to ourselves. Shall we wash your hair?" And she says, "Oh, no." And he says, "Come on, you know how being clean just cheers you up." And so she says, "All right." So he gets the one little pot, and they have this tiny little sink, and she puts her head over the sink, and he gets the temperature of the water just right, and pours it on her, and then uses dish soap to soap her up, and then gets one more thing of water. And then they don't even have towels, so he uses a little dish towel to try to wash her off. And it's incredibly touching, this little tiny scene in the midst of this very difficult situation. But in the end, as all the tension's been building, finally, the poor old woman loses control of her bowels once again, but all over the floor. And the pregnant mother, her son tries to rush her into the bathroom, but the pregnant mother is stuck with the mess, and she tries to say, "You need to come out here and clean this up." And he's saying, "I can't, I'm trying to clean my mother up. I can't. And she's saying, "You must come, And you feel her just not wanting to deal with this, but she finally does. And when he comes out, she just loses it at him. Just, "What is the matter with you? You can't do this." And she starts to, and this big tough man just starts to cry and says, "Please don't hit me, please don't hit me, please, please." And it stops her, and it kind of stops him, and the whole situation just ends up in this enormous pit of what it is to be human. There's the old woman who doesn't want to inflict any of this on anyone who can't help it. There's a son who can only do what he can. There's a mother who can only do what she can, who doesn't want to be here. And you just feel everybody just not wanting it to be this way. And the mother eventually comes out to him and says, "I'm so sorry. I'm so, so, so sorry." And he starts to kind of come out of his shell. And they stop for a little while, and he finally says, "Well, can I touch you?" And she first kind of flinches, like, "What do you mean?" He said, "Your belly. Now, can I feel the baby?" And she says, "Yes." And so he places his hand on her belly, and you just feel this, oh, right. There's beauty, and there's connection, and there's something, and we can't even even know. Why is that so compelling? Have that connection. What is it? And the old woman comes out and is trying to say sorry to everyone, but everyone kind of, shuffles around her and gets on to their day. And you can feel her incredible loneliness and the way she doesn't want it to be this way. This is the very end of the play, and this very interesting thing happened, which was she talks about a memory that she has of being a little girl at the sea and running out into the waves and everyone looking at her. She can feel all these people with her. And she looks out at the audience and says, they're all looking at me. They're all with me. And this is where the audience being all mixed in on the stage, she starts to approach one person just with her hand out. And I can immediately feel in myself this tendency of like, oh, this is so canned. Like, come on, you're not gonna like make me. And start to recoil. And the way this actress just held this contact, she'd go to one person and the next person and the next person and the next person. And you could just feel we're in this with her. Whether we want to be or not, we are deeply in this situation. And that was the end of the play. And we left it, you look around, everyone around you, and everyone has tears in their eyes because there's this feeling of just, we're in this together. Whether we want, whether we like the circumstances, whether we don't, whether we think it should be this way, whether we don't, whether we like how our bodies are behaving or our hearts are behaving, we're in this together. And that if we can somehow bear that, it changes us. And Zen's funny this way because it doesn't explicitly talk too much about the love part, or certainly not the sex part, or the desire, or all these things that make up the red thread, and yet it kind of harkens to it in this koan. Why can't the clear-eyed bodhisattva cut the red thread? And I think what's interesting about it is it like in being part of a sangha, or in having a teacher, or in having friends, or having a family, it's like there's no escaping the messiness of it. And, we sometimes in just the span of a week of a retreat, but over time we fall in love with each other, or we fear and envy each other, or we think we drive each other absolutely nuts, or we want more of each other, or we have dreams of each other that we would really prefer not to have. We feel all embarrassed about and or ashamed about. And yet it's by I remember a good teacher friend of mine who's not part of PZI, so you won't have to wonder who is this. He's a straight guy. He had a male teacher, and he told me, oh man, I would have these wild sex dreams about my teacher. And I would go to him and say, is this normal? Surely this can't be normal. And his teacher would say, just stick with it. You don't have to think it means anything or doesn't mean anything. Just stay with what's moving through you. And I think one of the richest aspects really of practicing in community is that we get to face all of that stuff. We get to hold it and let it move through us. And there was a woman I worked with for quite some time. She's I guess she calls herself a somatics and trauma therapist, but really what she's interested in is intimacy. what gets in the way of intimacy. And she would say, pain happens in relationship, so we have to heal in relationship. You can't, and you know the tendency, like, I'll just get myself all together and then I'll be with people and they'll just love me and I won't have to face all of these parts that are icky or needy or, I don't know, that I think I shouldn't have, that are painful or annoying or that I can't help. But it's the very way of sticking with it and being in it with each other that allows us to heal and be all right. Because in a sense, you know, you think it's about them. You think it's about that woman, or I don't know, that this person can't be trusted, or that they just drive me nuts, or that if I don't get to be with them that I'll die. But it's really it's like those connections become a way of knowing our own hearts and our own experience. And when I don't need to get away from what I'm experiencing, somehow it doesn't seem so important to get away from other people. How am I doing? Maybe I'll sit a little bit. I just want to read you one thing before we do. So, in a somewhat adjacent tradition, the great Socrates was said to have some of his, the way he was most provoked to most of his great ideas, more people are discovering, came through his relationship with a courtesan who was this incredibly well-versed and beautiful woman, very eloquent, very particularly eloquent in matters of the heart. And for Socrates, he felt like love and learning were completely entwined. That we have whatever light exists in us that we pass on to someone else comes through love. And even in learning the most sort of nerdy things, it's an excitement for and a love for those things that we somehow end up sharing. And not unlike the transmission in Zen, it's very mysterious how things get passed along or in what way. You know, what is it about, I don't know, since we're sort of loving on John Tarrant today in his absence, what is it about when he just laughs and says, you know, let's meditate? If you think, yeah, that's why we're here. That's what I want to be here for. Or he sort of clatters on his keyboard very loudly and you think, hey, is that allowed in meditation? But somehow that's what becomes part of it, you know. It's infused with what it is for him. It's infused in what it is for all of us. So this is someone who is learning from Socrates, but he says, one thing, Socrates, I must say, which you will find unbelievable, but which is nevertheless true. I never learned anything from you, as you well know. However, I profited when I was with you, even when I was only in the same house without being in the same room. And when I was in the same room, I would have my eyes fixed upon you while you talked, and I felt that I profited more than when I looked elsewhere. But most of all, I profited when I was seated next to you and when I touched you. And that's kind of the red thread. That thing that makes us want to be close and be changed, be tied, be inextricable from the presence of others. Be they bird others, or frog others, or human others, or art others. That we profit when we're touched by each other, when we're even in the same room with each other. So let's see what it's like. We'll sit for a little bit. Why can't the clear-eyed bodhisattva sever the red thread? You can feel how clarity and mystery are really not so separate. When we can bear to stay with whatever it is and keep looking and feeling and being transformed by, and keep including. When we can stay open to the mystery, clarity appears. And then it tends to play hide and seek with us. But it's the staying with all of life pouring through us that comes with awakening. Why can't the clear-eyed bodhisattva sever the red thread? Why can't the clear-eyed bodhisattva sever the red thread? Why do we think we need to sever the red thread? One of the big themes that seemed to surface in our retreat last weekend, I know some of you were in retreat in here as well, but one of the themes we seemed to keep circling back to, given our topic, was someone said, oh, I understand the red thread, koan. It's like having teenagers. And it's the fraught nature of deeply loving some part of life that you can't control and might sometimes be incredibly painful to you, but you can't help loving anyway. And that you're changed by in some deep way as a result of loving. And I think it's most obvious in teenagers perhaps, but it comes by way of loving friends or loving co-workers or loving clients or loving even, like I could feel watching those little toddlers yesterday. Like I immediately became invested in their happiness and well-being and what was happening. And it's like by even being part of the world in any way, we're immediately implicated. We become just sometimes that's easy when we think it's clear what's needed or how to love people or when it's going well. But it gets very messy when it's much less clear what's needed or it's not going so well. And I don't know, as we were sitting, I keep thinking there's something going on in my own life. There's a young person I know who I'm very close with who has decided to undergo gender reassignment. And to a point of like having surgery and, taking on what feels to me to be a big thing. And I notice how much in myself, this is the red thread, how much I want them to be okay, and how much I want this, how much I realize I don't quite understand what's happening. And every time I want to try to have a theory or an opinion or an answer about what's happening, I can't really find one. And I notice they don't really have one either. They're just following something that's happening inside of them. And it's just very interesting. Like in one way, it's their life. I'm not responsible. I'm not any of those things, but I'm implicated because I care and I want to understand and I want to accompany. And I was realizing, just thinking about this koan, how often that's true. We watch someone go through something, or we ourselves are going through something, and we're trying so hard to know, how do we accompany each other? How do we be in so much that we don't understand? And including what's happening in us most of the time, without severing it, without cutting it off by having an opinion or a theory or coming to a conclusion too early. And there's something about being in that raw, intimate space where I don't exactly even know what's happening, but I'm willing to be here in it with the world. I'm willing to be in it with whatever the contents of my own heart and not run away. That's somehow being willing to feel that red thread. And I think there's also an aspect that's realizing that that's the thing that connects everything. That willingness to somehow be, or that longing to be met or accompanied, to be in something together. And I don't know, I thought I'd read you a few things that somehow seem to be about that. One is, let's see, where did I put it? One is a spring poem. It's by a woman named Gillian Clark. It's called Miracle on St. David's Day. And I lost you. How did I do that? There we go. Here's what she says about it, which I just really love. She says, all you need to know about this poem is that it's true. It's a true story. It happened in the 70s, and it took me years to find a way to write the poem. I thought, all right, I'm interested. It starts with a quote by The Daffodils by William Wordsworth, which says, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. And she says, an afternoon yellow and open-mouthed with daffodils. The sun treads the path among cedars and enormous oaks. It might be a country house, guest strolling, the rumps of gardeners between nursery shrubs. I am reading poetry to the insane. An old woman interrupting offers as many buckets of coal as I need. A beautiful chestnut-haired boy listens entirely absorbed. A schizophrenic on a good day, they tell me later. In a cage of first March sun, a woman sits not listening, not feeling. In her neat clothes, the woman is absent. A big, mild man is tenderly led to his chair. He has never spoken. His laborer's hands on his knees, he rocks gently to the rhythms of the poems. I read to their presences, absences, to the big dumb laboring man as he rocks. He is suddenly standing silently, huge and mild, but I feel afraid. Like slow movement of spring water or the first bird of the year in the breaking darkness, the laborer's voice recites the daffodils. The nurses are frozen, alert. The patients seem to listen. He is hoarse but word perfect. Outside, the daffodils are still as wax. 1,000, 10,000, their syllables unspoken, their creams and yellows still. 40 years ago, in a valley school, the class recited poetry by rote. Since the dumbness of misery fell, he has remembered there was a music of speech, and that once he had something to say. When he's done, before the applause, we observe the flowers' silence. A thrush sings and the daffodils are aflame. There's something about, I think this poem struck me because you never know how you're going to reach people. You never know what's going to awaken in response. Somehow, I don't know, why would you go read poetry there? It doesn't make any sense, but your heart somehow leads you into that. You find yourself in this situation, and this man, having never spoken in his life, finds the words pouring out of his mouth. There's one more here. This is just sort of the other side of things, just being deeply woven into the fabric of life. It's called On the Back Porch. The cat calls for her dinner. On the porch I bend and pour brown soy stars into her bowl, stroke her dark fur. It's not quite night. Pinpricks of light in the eastern sky, and above my neighbor's roof, a transparent moon, a pink rag of cloud. Inside my house are those who love me. My daughter dusts biscuit dough, and there's a man who will lift my hair in his hands, brush it until it throws sparks. Everything is just as I've left it. Dinner simmers on the stove. Glass bowls wait to be filled with gold broth. Sprigs of parsley on the cutting board. I want to smell this rich soup, the air around me going dark as stars press their simple shapes into the sky. I want to stay on the back porch while the world tilts towards sleep, until what I love misses me and calls me in. Being woven into the world. And the stars and the soy cat little flakes and everything that comes along with it. And let's see. I'm tired of talking myself. I'd love to hear from a couple others. Jesse Cardin is on. Do you have anything to say, Jesse?
Yeah, thank you. That was beautiful. What do I say about that? Just as you're talking, I'm noticing that's the mark of a good talk. I feel like where when I'm listening to it, I can watch my life transform right before my eyes. And maybe that, I don't know if that's a mark of a good talk, but it's a mark of a good talk for me today. I'm living with my in-laws right now with my wife and our toddler son while we wait to ship off to Hawaii in about a month. And I was really dreading it because who wants to live with their in-laws for a month with their toddler son and their partner? And her family is very different from mine. The, in a way, their red thread is more raw and exposed and unrefined. And in a way, and I'd always thought that was kind of like not a good thing. It's more so than my family, which our conflicts are more covert. They're just kind of out in the open with it. I thought, oh God, but I noticed as we've been here, I guess it's been a week today. I noticed that it's starting to change me, and in a way that I kind of like. There's another kind of intimacy in that I'm really starting to savor. Like we can just argue about whatever. And or at my house, we like don't really argue. We're very nice to each other, but there's a kind of tightness to it. I think everybody behaves themselves, and just appreciating that. I think that the more I'm here, the more I get saturated with that way of being, and that there doesn't have to be this really tight, like, oh, we had an argument about something and now we need to fix it, and then we need to apologize and say I love you and hug and make up, and that everything needs to be okay. Like there's a kind of boundlessness about we're just, like Tess and I were talking the other day, and the 16 Bodhisattvas koan came up. We're just in the bath of the red thread with each other, and it's not really clear. It's not so clear what's going on with other people or even what's going on with me, but I like what it's doing to me. And but that openness to I can't escape it. I'm going to be here for another 3 weeks or something. And first I thought, oh God, another 3 weeks. But now I'm starting to realize I kind of like to stay here longer because I'm learning things, being changed by them. And wow, what a remarkable thing that is. And there's love inside of that, I think, is the thing. There's love when I give her mom a hard time about something. There's love when, and I don't know, just that. Thank you for that gift, I think, Tess, of inviting me into my own life, really, and that, like the sitting in the audience that's not quite the audience, and the woman coming forward. I don't have to do the move of pulling away and, oh, this is so corny and whatever it is. Like I can just be in it, and it changes me. So thank you.
Thanks. The other thing you make me think of in that is how I've said this to people myself, but I've also heard it said that to get angry with someone is really, you must love them a lot. For some people it comes easily, and for some people it's actually a tremendous act of vulnerability to show that you've made me this upset, or that something matters this much, or that I'm willing to risk my usual, whatever it is, to really be angry and be in it. Italians, I think, master doing that all the time somehow, but
That's right. Her mom's Italian, by the way.
Right? Other more in cultures, but it really is like, can we just have really what we're having and not, oh no, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. Thanks, Jesse. What else might be? There's someone else I was looking for earlier. They seem to have disappeared on me. Christina Schmiegel, you have anything you'd like to say?
Oh, it's just so incredibly beautiful, Tess. It was just the whole thing. The description of the play, everything, just incredibly beautiful to me, and just so vividly true. And then, just as Jesse was saying, the way it opens up one's own life, as you were describing the play and the situations. I'm half tempted not to say anything, but I guess I'll tell this one story that, so I've had somebody staying with me who's been in my life off and on in various ways for 40 years, and who, like, maybe I'm carrying like a atlas-sized ball of red thread around. And when he arrived, he's wearing a purple corduroy shirt of a color that was just like a deep red violet color that was like no color I've ever seen a piece of clothing be. It was so rich and so deep that it was like medieval in its quality. And the whole first half of a day that he's here, part of me kept wanting to tell him to be quiet because I just wanted to listen to the color of the shirt. It's like, I just like sit here with the shirt. And so finally we finished a meal or whatever. And I said to him, that shirt, that's the most beautiful color of shirt I have ever seen in my whole life. Where does that shirt come from? And he was kind of like, the shirt? Well, I don't know. I bought it in Paris. And I'm like, what's the make of that shirt? And so then we're investigating the label on the shirt because I need to know how to have a shirt like that. And then, like, completely uncharacteristically, I say to him, you know, when you're ready to get rid of that shirt, no matter what shape that shirt is in, can I have that shirt? And I mean, I don't think I've ever said something like that to anyone my whole life. And he's like, well, it doesn't fit me very well. I'm going to give it to you right now. So now I have this shirt. And I'm not going to be able to wear that shirt. Like, that shirt is too loaded to possibly wear. And yet I coveted that shirt so badly that I actually asked him to take the shirt off and give it to me. And so as we've been talking about the red thread, I'm thinking, like, maybe I'm just going to take that shirt and sew it all up with red thread, like, because it's obviously holding something in the way exactly like you were describing about the messiness of the things we feel about each other and how we're connected and what we love about each other and what's provocative about each other for ourselves. So I don't know. So now I'm living with this purple shirt.
We hope you will wear it next week. Well, but I think I'm surprised you're not wearing it now.
It smells like him. Too much.
I think that's such an interesting thing. Thank you for that story, because it's like we get dared to be ourselves all the time. And I think there's a question of, like, do we take the dare or somehow shy away from it because we think, oh, that must mean something, if I can bear to wear that shirt or not, it must mean something about me, when it's like, I think that's part of the way of how we get transformed by people, is they disturb us or they open us, and it's like, will we take the dare? So I dare you to wear the shirt next week. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you, Tess.
We have a Michelle riddle. You have anything you'd like to say, Michelle?
When I look at myself and I see that I'm very dark, so I'm speaking out of the shadows. Yeah, thanks. So what I've been thinking about listening, I've really enjoyed being here too, and what sort of comes out of what Jesse said, in the sense that there's a possibility of how to be in the world that's different than my assumptions in a situation. And sometimes, yeah, like I can see that through other people being different. But for me, a sort of red thready place in my life right now is this house that I've bought with my husband. We're sort of rebuilding. And there's a lot of stress involved in that. We're spending money that we maybe didn't intend to spend. There's a lot of physical challenges to it, a lot of management, and lots of decisions, and decision after decision after decision. And so there's a lot of opportunity to misunderstand each other and to disagree. And I noticed yesterday, we were there and we were doing physical work, and both of us probably trying our absolute best, but patience was thin. And I noticed myself having these, like, feeling like, you can't treat me that way, I don't deserve this, those kinds of feelings, and protecting myself in a very old pattern sort of way. And in a way, I felt I was just tired of that. And so something in me didn't follow the path I usually would when I get those kind of feelings that I need to defend myself. And mostly just, I think a good word for it is I just sort of, I could bear it. I thought I can bear this. And almost like right after that, then it was like, well, maybe I don't actually know what this is. And maybe I assumed this was some sort of bad intent on his part, the parts where it was coming at me. And then I could see that it really wasn't, and so everything, it got so much better. And so it was another way of getting at that I could be different in a situation than I assumed, just by thinking and noticing that I could probably bear it. And so I think as Tess was talking today too, it came to me that if I just don't think I can't bear it, then anything's possible. So thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. That's great. I think that's a very interesting thing about things might not be what we think. Like even what I'm like, I remember having a wild fight with a partner one time, and there was so much anger, and then looking into each other's face and almost bursting out laughing. Like all of a sudden the whole thing seemed incredibly I didn't even know what I wanted anymore. I didn't even know what I was fighting about. But it was the willingness to have all of it that somehow then like let something different happen. And it's the essence of so many of the koans that like I have to take that step off, that I'm not quite sure what's happening or good or bad, and see what appears next. And yeah, that's great. Let's see how I was gonna do something else, but I think let's just sit for just a couple minutes and just kind of, I don't know, feel each other. Just feel being here together for this spring. It's spring in California. It's almost spring here. And just see what it's like to be here together. Whatever you're having this morning, just have it. Great wave of being human, being whatever it is. Why can't the clear-eyed bodhisattva sever the red thread? Thanks so much for being here, everyone. So nice to be with you, and I don't know, there's something very nice about being here, thinking about John, too. So I'm gonna hand it over to Amaryllis and Jesse now.
of the world. I vow to set endless heartache to rest. I vow to walk through every wisdom gate. I vow to live the great Buddha way. I vow, I vow, I vow to wake all the beings of the world. I vow to set endless heartache to rest. I vow to walk through every wisdom gate. I vow to live the great Buddha way. I vow, I vow, I vow to wake all the beings of the world. I vow to set endless heartache to rest. I vow to walk through every wisdom gate. I vow to live the great Buddha way. I vow, I vow, I vow, I vow.
Wow. Thank you, Amaryllis and Jesse. That was incredible. And thank you, Michael, so much for carrying us with yours. Someone said to me once about Michael's music, she could just feel the stars in the sky coming out of his music and then coming into her heart and coming out and going in. So, and thanks, everyone. John Tarrant should be back next Sunday